Hey there, welcome to ATL and 29, a podcast that looks at the NBA from the starting point of Atlanta. My name is Kevin Chouinard. I'm here with Tyler Jones and Glen Willis. We're recording on an exciting Friday night. Thank you for taking the time to do an unplanned emergency pod because big things are happening. Uh, Glenn, what do you think of the proceedings today?
I mean, I know. So I want to kind of talk first. Like some Hawks fans, I think are disappointed because they didn't get a top 50 player or something back. That was their expectation. I don't think that was ever the plan. In a deal like this, I think they want defense, they want size. We've all talked about how Quinn talked about size, basically the whole season long. And now you kind of look at the additions of Rea Shay and in this case Dyson Daniels being in the deal and EJ Liddell in the deal. It's hard to know what the plans for Liddell are at this point in time. I guess, well, I guess we have to wait until there's a press conference or something like that. But that feels like it's going to be 10 days away if they may not announce this for officially for a while. But then that Lakers pick being unprotected helps. The West is stacked. The Lakers are a weird team. Yeah, they're a team that feels like there's a lot of different possible outcomes that they could hit next year. So I think there's some upside in that pick. That other pick is, the lesser of two and I think 27. And so for me, like an organization that looks at something that wasn't working, and again, I like DeJounte individually as a player. Trey is obviously the guy that you make a priority to kind of build around. And, the not beating your head against the wall, doing the same thing over and over and over. Smart organizations do what they can to fix issues. I don't want to even say mistake. I mean, mistake's probably a fair word in some regards to the how much they spent to get DeJounte in the first place, all that sort of stuff. We don't have to go back and recover that again. But smart organizations look at things that aren't working and address them. And I feel like the Hawks did that with this trade.
I actually do want to go back to the original Dejounte Murray trade just to talk about because the picks were so far in the future, the Hawks really didn't lose that much present value other than the opportunity cost of getting a better fitting player. So getting that 25 pick back, unprotected lottery, that's for the Lakers. To me, that's a massive value on top of somebody as talented as good, honestly, as good as Dyson Daniels. I'm super high on him. We'll talk about him in a second, but getting a real rotation player, two real rotation players at bare minimum. I think Dyson might have a chance to start next season. And Dyson Daniels and uh, Larry Nance, combined with a potential another lottery ticket in EJ Liddell if he can return to form another year removed from his knee surgery. Like that's a good haul. Like and two, in a two first, like that's recouping value, and it's Dejounte really did the Hawks a massive favor signing that extension. I don't think they do not get this type of value out of a Dejounte Murray trade unless he signs for a below market deal in which he gets that 50% trade kicker, by the way. I'm pretty sure. Uh, Depending on when I'm pretty sure both both his previous contract and the future one had the trade kicker in. So he's gonna get a little bonus for himself. But regardless, like the Hawks, like he did like DeJounte, all credit to him. We can talk about why it didn't work and our the issues with Train DeJounte later, but like he did the team a good like he did not have to sign that extension because he had the Hawks over a barrel with how much future value that the Hawks invested in him and the fact that it didn't work the previous season. Like, they ended up with the number one overall pick and they had health issues, but like even when they were healthy, they weren't good. They were a 500 team. So to me, like it's a culmination of honestly good GM work from when Fields and his team has taken over. They convinced DeJounte to sign the deal. I'm pretty sure the 15% trade kicker was a huge deal so that he gets even now if it doesn't work and he gets traded, he gets more money for him. Uh, and the Hawks get to recoup value that they lost when they originally did the deal. So like, not like to me, I feel like the Hawks future facing and even present, they got better. Like I just think Dyson Daniels plugs a hole the Hawks have had since Damari Carroll and Thabo Sefolosha was was on the Hawks almost 10 years ago. Like not just okay perimeter defense, not just beyond just good point of attack defense, great point of attack defense. Like I think Daniels is an elite defender in this game. If they can, and I think there's some upside with him offensively in Quinn's system, but we can talk about that later. But I'm like I'm amazed the Hawks got this much value for Dejounte, all things considered.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you post date the trade or whatever, it's almost like they're getting the 3 firsts back because you're getting Daniels and you're getting 2 first-round picks, one of which is obviously more valuable than the other. But it felt for a while now like the Pelicans and the Hawks were sort of a match made in heaven for a deal because the Hawks had this mismatch of having too many point guards, and there's a value to that. Like you're set if when Trey gets hurt, it's like, you've got this perfect contingency plan. They won't have that anymore. But they really just had 2 point guards, and the Pelicans, like, I can't think of another team in the league that had that much perimeter defense between Daniels, Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, Najee Marshall. It's like that's like nobody else had that kind of stack of perimeter defense, and the Hawks needed that. So, this is a pretty natural fit. Like you don't take on Brandon Ingram because you don't want to pay Brandon Ingram. So that's pretty natural, but you're recouping a lot of that value on the Dejounte Murray trade. So and it's crazy, but Tyler hit it exactly on the head. Like this doesn't happen without that extension. Like the Hawks could have had some real doomsday scenarios if he doesn't sign that extension, but since he did, they're really getting so much of that value back. Like they're really, what are they missing? They've got the pick swaps, but they got a ton back. So it seems like a win-win deal for both teams, really.
And importantly here, if the Hawks are good, and they should be good, at least to me, like they should, as long as they're not going to trade Bogey and Trey, the offense is going to be good. Now Quinn's fixing the defense. Now the Hawks, to me, it might not be elite special, but now they're on the path of having a real defense with consistently good perimeter defenders on the floor 48 minutes per night. When you factor in Rea Shay, Dyson Daniels, Vit Krejci even, and Kobe Buffkin. Like,
yeah, they got 3 guys now that can defend guards.
Yep.
Right. Buffkin, Vit, and Daniels can all defend guards. Right. And that is I can't even remember the last time. You'd have to go back to the team that had like Bazemore and Cephalosha. Like I can't even think like when they had 3 guys that can defend guards. That makes Trey's life easier, gives you more flexibility. They didn't trade him for a guy who's going to come back and need to play at the 3 and the 4, right? Defensively, they got guys who can defend on the ball now, right? And that's going to be a big deal, right? And we don't know how the center situation is going to shake out, right? Right now, Capella and Okongwu and Nance are on the roster, right? It seems like that's too many, because they're all capable of playing, normal rotation minutes and even more in some cases. But it's been interesting to see like Hawks fans on Twitter, like some people are like Nance is a bad defender and can't rebound. I don't know where that comes from. I mean, I guess I have to be kind and say Hawks fans don't necessarily watch a lot of Pelicans games, maybe, and that's what it is. But for me, when it comes on the Nance side, and people are asking, like, well, is Nance going to play for the Hawks, or are they going to send him out in another deal? What's it going to be? And when I look at it, I shared this on Twitter earlier. Nance fits the Okongwu offensive template way more than Clint, right? The passing, he's not some high level shooter, but he's added a shot. He can make a corner 3. He can make plays on the move in a way that Clint can't. right? Now, Clinton has a lot of defensive value. We've talked about that. But in terms of Quinn wanting the ball to move and to not stick and to get big men who can function in short roll, make reads, have hands, you can build a rotation of Okongwu and Nance sharing the center position and not have to change what you're doing with your center on offense when one leaves the floor and one comes on. You can continue kind of doing the same things and have that continuity, and that's really interesting to me.
And also importantly, you can play Okongwu and Nance together and the offense not completely collapse if there's injuries. Say Jalen goes down for 2 weeks. It's okay to put Nance at the power forward position. He's played half his career at that position. Honestly, center is relatively new for him, which by the way, guys, he's done a really good job. Like, the Pelicans routinely close with Nance at center when they're trying to win basketball games. Like, he's turned himself into one of the best utility bigs in the game. Like, full stop. Not somebody you want starting, but a basketball player who will plug a hole. That's Larry Nance now. Like, and he's turned himself into a really good player. And just again, another quality big where you pair him potentially either with Okongwu or Capella. I'm going to guess Okongwu just because I feel with the Hawks making the decision of going with Rea Shay 1, that they want a younger front court to build out. And like Jalen Okongwu is it's a good pairing. You pair that next to a Rea Shay now, like to me, and on top of that, and also a Dyson Daniels. Now you're absolving the biggest issue Okongwu's had defensively, where it's like Okongwu's on the floor, and if Jalen's not there with him, there's nobody with real size on the team that can support a small center. Really, he's just small for a center. But now you're rolling out lineups with potentially 6'8", 6'10", 6'10", at shooting small forward and power forward. Like, we're talking about a completely different defensive environment. That's somewhere where I'm like, the Hawks are actually trying to build around Okongwu for the first time in his career. He's no longer, like, to me, I'm looking at this, I'm like, Okongwu's no longer being looked at as just a plug guy, 24-minute starter, just does everything that, comes off the bench, and like, we're just going to throw him out there with no consideration of his strengths and weaknesses as a basketball player. This feels like beyond the Jalen fit, which we may get into a second, but like, this feels like for the first time since the Hawks have drafted Onyeka Okongwu, that they're considering Okongwu as the true center of this team who's going to play more. So, like, it's just another added layer of why I'm really excited for what the Hawks have done, like, this offseason. Like,
Pelicans were sixth in defensive rating last year, and they were 8 points better when Nance was on than Valanciunas. And Nance can get to the level of the screen. Nance can get from the weak side corner to the rim. He's got that mobility, and he's just a little bit of a different kind of athlete. I mean, Valanciunas has had a nice career. I don't want to take that away from him at all. But as we talk about all the time, the league's going in a different direction. And when we were trying to envision the Hawks potentially taking Klingon, and we talked a lot about him, right? The question was, oh man, the 5-out stuff, right? And to me, if the we don't know yet, but if the duo is Nance and Okongwu, I think you got that flexibility to play at the level, switch maybe against some opponents depending upon how dynamic their ball handlers are, and match up 5-out, and you got guys like Jalen weak side rim help, and you think Rea Shay develops that at some point. I don't know if Hunter's going to be on the team or not. If he is, I think he plays off the bench. Maybe, I don't know. He could start at 3. I mean, right? I don't think they start Rea Shay right off the bat this year. It wouldn't bother me if Hunter. I know Hawks fans will tell me they feel differently, but it would be interesting if Hunter's at the. But I mean, Hunter gives you another big guy to help organize and kind of on the weak side of the floor. But we'll see what they do in the next week or so.
I'll say this about Rea Shay. The decision to not trade for Ingram is a just like I want to say like an approval of Rea Shay is going to play a lot of minutes. You, like we're not going to block Rea Shay's development with somebody like Ingram who functionally plays the same position, or the 3-4 hybrid. So like to me, whether Rea Shay is starting or not, he's going to play starters minutes, at least as I see the bones of this team. Uh, just because like it's not that he doesn't have competition, but like he offers a unique. His shooting just offers something very unique relative to Dyson Daniels, relative to Vit Krejci, two guys who are currently the only guys really in competition for those minutes at the three spot currently. It depends for me based on what we saw from DeAndre Hunter this past season. If DeAndre Hunter's back, I just think he's a more natural, true power forward backing up Jalen. Just because I don't see a scenario where Quinn is going like. I mean, the reality is the Hawks offense was just so much better when Vit was inserted at that wing spot next to a bogey and in a point guard compared to when they went back and put and Vit wasn't on on the team anymore and it was just Hunter at the three. Like it just doesn't like he's just not he doesn't do what Quinn needs from a wing. Whereas at the forward position, he could just be a shooter, spacer, provide size on the back line. Though there's I think there's still if Capella's not on the team, there might be issues with him as being the low man. But that's a conversation for another day. Me personally, I would be pretty surprised if Hunter is back, just because I think it's about clearing the runway for Rea Shay. Like I think winning is important for this Hawks team, but I think it's less important than development of these young talents, like developing Rea Shay, developing Jalen. Like I think that's going to be a bigger priority than I initially thought when they drafted him number one, because they didn't trade for him and they could have. Like I think this package they got is compensation for not taking somebody as talented as Ingram. They got more picks, more players instead of just one guy in Brandon.
To go back to what Glenn said at the outset, since you just brought up that phrase, clearing the runway, and Brad gave me shit this week for saying that I've used that phrase too much recently, but the top 50 player that you're getting back is Jalen. You're clearing the runway for Jalen. Like it's his turn to be a top 50 player. You're not trying to get that somewhere else. He's shown that it's time to see if he can make that leap. And now he's going to have. Now that doesn't mean that everything is great on the roster, and I'm going to ask you a question about that in a second. But in terms of just volume and he wasn't going to get the kind of opportunity that he needed if he was playing with Trey and Dejounte for another season. But that doesn't mean that everything's great. Like there is still this need because Dejounte did a lot offensively for the Hawks. It was a lot of points. It was a big thing for Trey to have another ball handler. I mean, that kind of changed what defenses could try against Trey when Dejounte was out there. And, Dejounte was a good clutch scorer. Like, again, that having Trey and Dejounte out there together kind of tweaked a little bit what defenses could do to Trey because, there was always another option. So I guess my next question for you is, what do the Hawks have to do to replace Dejounte's offense, at least situationally?
Yeah, so I would say if Glenn were answering this question, he'd say, like he talks about rebound, we're going to do it as a team. We're going to move the ball. We're going to break the paint. We're going to kick it out. We're going to move it, right? And I want guys that whip the ball around, right? We talked about how V exemplified that late in the season, right? And I think that's what he's going to try to get Dyson to do. I think that Rea Shay is going to get ingrained in that from the very, very beginning. And Kobe and Kobe does it too. So I think, it is interesting to think about, and some of my favorite people I interact with on Twitter are like, oh my gosh, like we lost 20 whatever points a game. And, and it's true. Like when a team gets bogged down in a random game in the middle of the season on a Wednesday night, they're playing the third time. Like sometimes it's nice to have a guy like Dejounte who can just go get you 14 points in the fourth quarter and just kind of make it easy for you, right? I think what Quinn looks at that and says, I don't want us to get stuck in that kind of dependency. I want us to rely on our movement. I want us to rely on our principles, on our the words he uses, habits, And so I think it's going to be a little bit of Kobe, a little bit of a lot of Jalen, right? I think I'm excited if Congo is getting elevated to starting position. I'm excited to see his ball handling and his passing and his creation, his rim pressure that he generates with his touch. I'm excited to see that. So for me, I think Quinn is like, let's see what we can do with the group. Now the thing that comes to mind for me is like, does Bogey start? Does Kobe start? What are they gonna do there? And if Bogey starts, is he gonna play 32 minutes? And I'm not sure that's the best. And so for me, it does feel like I don't know if it's a guy that you'd want to play all the time, but it might not be a terrible idea if they have a guard who's towards the end of his career, who has had at one point in his career kind of primary point guard responsibility, and you can go to that if Kobe's having a rough night, or if Kobe's playing they're playing against one of the top defenses in the league. They're playing the Celtics, and Kobe just can't figure out like how to deal with Drew, or whatever it might be. And so I do wonder if like they're gonna kind of have you know some sort of kind of third option to kind of go to if things are just kind of really stuck again. A veteran who you don't want to try to do that 82 games a year, but like I don't know, 15 games a year, you might have to turn to I don't know, the guy could like Reggie Jackson or whoever that might be able to just go
Bring
out and just be a professional point guard in his minutes if it's not going well for the younger guys.
bring Lou Williams out of retirement. That's what Glen's calling for.
I was going to say Jamal Crawford, but you're going to need a time machine for either one.
Yeah.
So that's my thought. It's Quinn. I mean, Quinn wants the principles, the habits, all that stuff. That's what he wants it to be about, and I think that's what he's going to lean on with this group this year.
For the veteran major pieces on the roster, so I'm talking about Trey, Bogey, Clint Capella, DeAndre Hunter. Does this move make their futures any different in Atlanta? Like, whose future do you feel like maybe changed the most today of those veterans? And by future, I mean future with the Hawks, to be clear.
Well, I'm not sure if it changed. Probably, honestly, probably Trey Young, just because the Hawks they didn't trade for Brandon Ingram, and so I think this is combined with the murmurs of the Hawks the Hawks aren't actively trying to trade, but they're willing to listen to offers. So I think this is one of those things where if it doesn't like if they get value for trade, they would consider it. But to me personally, I don't see that happening either this season. I don't think the market is there for Trey Young at the moment, and like his reputation across the league is just not great. And I think that's dumb by the league, but certain guys get a rap, and unfortunately for Trey, he has one. So like to me, he's kind of like honestly, he's kind of stuck here, and they're all. But at the same time, I say that I initially say that negative with Trey, but I also want to say it positive. Like they're actively trying to build around Trey Young to get a functional defense, to get physical, long, athletic, wing size defenders that can guard multiple positions to take the burden off Trey defensively so that offensively Trey can do what Trey does best. And if we get the Trey that bought in last season on that bad Hawks defense, Trey Young completely bought in. If we still got that Trey, we might get the best we've ever seen from this upcoming year, depending on the other moves that the Hawks make. To me, I think even more important than the shot creation, Glenn, I think they need one more shooter. I like somebody preferably at the power forward or even maybe center position, just a true sniper there. Just to spread out the shooting between Garrison Matthews, Bogdanovich, and another, if so not all the pressure on shooting from a big size player is on Rea Shay. Like if he has a slump, you can go towards this veteran who, who's been in the league for multiple, like 8+ years or whatever, and is a consistently good shooter in the NBA. Like just somebody who may not play every day, but just another quiver in the toolbox that Quinn could use if he needs something to break up a little bit. I think he needs one more bomber. He doesn't have to be a good defender. Like I'm thinking like for the Cavaliers. My goodness. He went to Iowa State. I hate when I blank on names. He used to play for Utah, Quinn, but like that's somebody I was thinking about. He's a bigger
the minivan?
Yeah, the mini French,
Yang?
whatever.
Oh,
Yeah,
Yang?
yeah.
Sorry, I didn't
Yang.
even get his nickname right.
Yeah, I just feel like just a bomber from three doesn't have to be a good defender. Somebody you're not probably going to play every day, but somebody who, okay, I really need shooting tonight. Like they're really harping in on Trey. Let's get Yang out there and let's open the game up a bit for my guys, and maybe potentially play Jalen at center with that lineup. So like I think that's somebody to look out for. And then there's other types. That type of player is what I think is what the Hawks are missing. To me, I just think I just find shot creation can be found for the cheap. Like I not to say it's not useful or valuable, but like if you're looking for that third guard who might not play every day, that's not something that's going to be hard to find on the free agent market or even potentially in Europe.
Yeah, agree. And for me, like when you look at the group they have right now, like, yeah, it's hard for you to know what to expect from Rea Shay as a shooter this year, right? Because he didn't really start shooting really well until some of this past season. But Dyson Daniels is a cutter. Rea Shay is a cutter. Veet is a cutter, right? And so it's going to be like when you think back to the Eastern Conference Finals, right? It was Trey and shooters everywhere. Trey, like Gallo playing time at the 5, even in some cases, right? Trey and shooters just spread out all over the place. Tony Snell and Bogey and Trey, all of that, right? Across those years when the Hawks were building that kind of offense, it was those kinds of guys. This group is more is as much cutters as spot up shooters. And I mean, to me, that Trey's passing is in a way more dynamic when he's creating shots at the rim. And for whatever number of years now, we've seen it be almost exclusively centers that is getting that shot creation at the rim. Now it's cutters. Now it's guys who are doing something else. Now when Anyek is at the elbow and he creates a pass and someone goes back door or whatever it is, like there's room at the rim. And that's the beauty of having Nance who could shoot it a little. That's the beauty of having a Kongu who could shoot it a little, is those guys don't just have to like put up threes. It also the cutting. The cutting is to be a big part of what they do this year. Quinn, like they didn't do any of it last year, but
They
Quinn
could.
loves split cuts. They didn't run any split cuts really last. They ran it in their summer league team ran some of that, right? But it's
Yeah.
gonna be interesting to me because that's where a lot of like the Warriors cutting comes from, and all their easy stuff was weak side split cuts, all that sort of stuff. So it'd be interesting to see if they get into more of that stuff this year. It's a lot harder with Trey and Dejounte on the court together to kind of get into that stuff because neither of them are really built for that. But I'll be interested to see if that's going to be something that Quinn says, "Oh, I can ask my guys to do this now."
We discussed Dyson Daniels and what he brings, but I don't know that I gave you the full opportunity to explain to our listeners what you think he's adding necessarily. So let me just bring it back to that one more time in case you didn't get the full. What are you looking for him to add when he gets here?
Physical point of attack defense and just physicality on both ends in general. From a guy who, from the guard position, like he's a 6'8", but I mean, he grew up playing point guard, so he has real passing equity. He's probably not a point guard in the NBA, but think Vit Krejci but more physical, more athletic, uh, similar shooting concerns. But like to me, I just think Daniels was in a bad shooting environment in the Pelicans. Like they don't have that elite creation from the point guard position to generate open 3-pointers for the team, or like the spacing was just bad. In like here in Atlanta, when you got Trey, Bogey, and potentially Rea Shay, and whoever else they get on the open market, or it could be Hunter as well. Like I just think, and you know, the 5-out system that Quinn's going to want to build, I think Dyson will find his offense in a much more positive light, similar to what Veet did towards the end of the season. Just flat out more, just a more physically talented player. Lottery pick uh, from Australia. Like I'm super high on him. Like I think he was he did to me. I feel like on a different team, he'd have he could potentially have a similar impact to what uh, the point guard for the Orlando Magic. Oh my gosh,
Suggs?
yeah, Jalen
Suggs?
Suggs.
Suggs?
Like
Yeah.
I think in a different environment, a different offensive environment, like just that intensity at the point of attack could really help the rest of this team set their defense consistently. Where now Jalen and like Rea Shay or Vit Krejci or whoever can really lock down on the other aspects of the game and protect Trey as a defender more better, like just flat out. So like I like to get Dyson, like to me, to get Dyson Daniels and an unprotected Lakers pick, a team that is not a contender. The Lakers are not contending, even though they want to be. They're in the same boat the Hawks have been the last couple of seasons. So like you get a potential lottery pick plus a guy who's been good when he's been able to play. He just when you're playing on a Pelicans team that doesn't have spacing and you're a negative shooter to start your career, it's just going to be hard to get minutes. And so, like, I think this environment is going to be really beneficial for somebody like Dyson Daniels.
Yeah, the defense is not just keeping the ball in front. It's like, oh, you're trying to get to your screen right there. No, I'm not letting you get over
Nope.
there, right? Or no, you can't dribble with your left hand. The ball's in your left hand. I'm just going to take the ball from you. I mean, he's so aggressive. He's relentless and he's so disruptive, and he knows what he can. He really understands what he can do. And it's funny because when you kind of get a glimpse of his personality, he's kind of, pretty easygoing. But like when he's defending the ball, he's like, I'm gonna literally take the ball from you if you don't take care of it. And I see what you're trying to do. I'm not gonna let you do the thing that you want to do. He makes a second action, a third action. He creates all that, and the Hawks had none of that last year.
None.
Like literally none of that last year. That's a big deal. And it's gonna be interesting to see the offensive productivity, the offensive fit, the offensive growth is going to be important for him to be able to play a bigger and bigger and bigger role. You know, but I think Quinn is like we're going to have our five guys take care of moving the ball and creating shots and getting Dyson into the right place in the offensive scheme and all that sort of stuff. I don't think there's this thing like Dyson. You got to shoot 37. No. What Quinn will tell him is if you're open, you're shooting. If you're
Yep.
open, you're shooting. And Dyson will take that shot. Dyson's a confident player. But Trey makes it easier. Like Dyson's never played with anybody like Trey before. I mean, it's not even close, right? But I do think the cutting and the even in transition, because he's pretty fast in a straight line, and there's a lot of good stuff there. It's kind of funny because when Hawks fans have been asking me about a trade, the thing I've kept saying, I've even said on this podcast a couple times, it's like, go find the next Chris Middleton. Now, so for me, like when the Bucks got Middleton like so easily, like that offensive potential that he had, the size that he had, I think of that defensively. Like it would not surprise
Yep.
me if Dyson Daniels becomes a guy who gets all defense. I mean, he has the raw skills to be that disruptive in the right setting, with the right coaching, with the right lineup construction around him. It won't surprise me if he's that good of a defender, right? And so I know Hawks fans are like, I want Brandon Ingram, or you hear like Cat, and you hear like, no, like what the Hawks have to do. The Hawks, first of all, the Hawks were not one player away. They just weren't, right? And what the Hawks need to do is add a Rea Shay, add a Dyson Daniels, add a whoever the next guy is, and continue to grow V, right? Continue to grow Kobe. Like building that up is what creates an opportunity to have some continuity and some scale in what you're building as a team, not just be like, we're going to get one guy to come in and kind of do all these things, and everybody else is just going to kind of give him a little bit of support. That's not what Quinn wants. Quinn wants to throw 5 players on the court at whatever point in the game and have them understand the principles, the habits, the connectivity, all that sort of stuff. And I think Dyson's gonna like just give them so much defensive value even this season. Can he
Here's
play 33 minutes a game? Can he close game? Like if he's not making shots, he might not close a game if they're playing from down 8 with 3 minutes, right? That's going to be the trick that determines like how much value they get from him individually this year is, can he kind of figure out how to kind of make his game work offensively sooner than later?
here's how good Dyson Daniels was last season as a 21-year-old. Shout out to DLee43 on Twitter. He just posted this. Fourth in deflections per 75 possessions, third in steals per 75 possessions, contested 34.23% of the shots at the rim while on the floor. He rated 88th percentile in defensive EPM, 91st percentile in defensive LeBron, 96th percentile in defensive box score plus minus. So we're talking about at somebody at 6'8" with a 6'11" wingspan that can guard at the point of attack against guards. Like that is all defense caliber. Full stop. If he gets the minute, it wouldn't shock me if he's on the team. Period. Like that's the type of defender he got. And I like because I like that the Hawks, instead of trading for a Marcus Smart, traded for a 21-year-old Marcus Smart.
100%.
Like they didn't try to go for the veteran who's good at this, who's been good at this for 8 years, Alex Caruso type, even though Caruso would have been great. They went for a younger player with some track record of success already, even though he's only been in the league 2 seasons into his career. He's injured. I like that they went like that instead of going Ingram, they were like, no, we want Dyson Daniels. We want the next Derek White. We want the next Marcus Smart. That's how you build a contender. That's how you build a sustainable winning basketball team that can consistently win 50-plus games every season. You don't go for the proven veterans. You go for the younger talent with the upside to grow and build up naturally. Like instead of going for these short-term fixes, the Hawks, credit to the front office to me. They went after, they clearly targeted a guy they feel can help them right away while also being part of their future core. And they got it cost them a good player in Dejounte Murray, but a player who, to me, on the Hawks, and I've said this a billion times, his value is simply at the point guard position. But unfortunately for Dejounte on the Hawks team, he's just a worse point guard than Trey Young. And then at the 2, he's just a worse Bogdanovich. And so you're not getting in this league where every team is so talented, like when you and like you're really like a variable away from going from an okay team to a good team to potentially a great team, 1 or 2 variables away. Like when you have that dynamic where you got a guy who just doesn't fit with your best player, who's at his best when your best player is off the floor, it just hurts you. So, like this is additive. This is adding a real defensive talent that could, alongside the other pieces that they've done with Rea Shay, with Jalen already on the roster. We talked about Kobe. Like this is how you do it. Like you do it with the young players. And I wanted to point out because Jason Walker on Twitter also pointed out that and somebody else also pointed out that the Hawks are going young. Will Trey be okay with that? And like my counter is that look at the rest of the league right now. The young teams are winning. It's not the old veterans.
Yeah.
The Clippers, the Suns, the Warriors, the Lakers. If you don't have the young talent to propel you on the 3rd and 4th nights in an 82-game season, it doesn't matter how good your team is in a 16, in a when you only got to win in the playoffs 16 games, with every team being so good, it's a dogfight in the regular season. So you need the younger leg.
Bucks got older and they had nothing.
Yep. Like you need the younger legs to really propel you forward. The Sixers they cleared all this cap space, and I think Morey realized I need young talent. What is Paul George going to do for me? Paul George is a great player, but what exactly is Paul George going to do that James Harden couldn't do? You know what I'm saying? Like it's the same issue. Like these older teams are really struggling to string together good 82 regular season games because they don't have the youth, they don't have the depth, they don't have the athleticism, and these young talented teams have the skill to compete with these older guys. That's why you see OKC running the West right now. That's why you see if the Grizzlies get healthy again, the Grizzlies are probably going to be good. You know, and with the East, we saw with the Pacers. Look, if you look at the impact each and every individual Pacer player had in their rotation, incredible season across the board. Not just Tyrese Halliburton, from TJ McCollum on down, all of them had great seasons.
Neesmith and Nemhart and all those guys, just
young talents, young, unproven, but they've been grinding for a couple seasons, learning the NBA game, and guess what? They're motivated to be better. All these young guys are motivated because they want that next contract. They want to be good in this league. They want to prove that they are one of the best players in this league, one of the best teams in this league. Like they're
getting opportunity.
And they're getting
opportunity that motivates them.
Yes.
Yeah, they're getting. I agree with you that they're getting Daniels at the perfect time. Like you've already, he's already gone through the growing pains of getting through the first couple of NBA seasons. So now he knows what it is. He knows what is expected of him. You mean the point about getting the defender on the early end of his career. Like that's when the great defenders actually play the defense. The NBA as a whole, like we're always a little bit too slow. Like somebody makes defensive player of the year like 2 years too late, or makes an all defense team like 2 years too late. Like takes a while for those reputations to build, but really it's happening earlier in the careers than you think. And he's the kind of guy that you're actually going to get it when he's actually doing it. I think that, the thing that worries me a little bit is like, the shooting, but also kind of the shooting, like he gets kind of like the passing, like he has the instincts of a point guard, but when he gets hesitant as a shooter and he realizes the teams aren't really guarding his shot, he also gets a little bit hesitant kind of overall.
Yeah.
But you're right. Like Glen's point about him being a cutter, that's right. Like that's, and it's going to be different if he's playing in a 5-out system, if he's playing in a system where there's just more spacing, where he's going to get the ball and better opportunities with Trey out there. And, I just really like the fit with somebody like Daniels and Okongwu because, if you want to make a switching lineup with Jalen and Kobe and Onyeka and Daniels, like you can do some of that. I made the same point for Rea Shay, but, the Hawks for years and years now have just been desperately bad in transition defense because, if you're sending guys to the offensive glass, it's going to come down on your 1 and your 2 and your 3. Well, for years now, that's just been a disaster. And here's another guy who, if he's playing the 3 or if he's playing the 2, Onyeka hits the glass and Daniels is getting back, you've got a real credible defender going to stop a fast break where they just have not had anything like that. And he's, as a rebounder, it's like, I don't know that he's a great rebounder numbers wise, but he's the kind of rebounder that if he's out there with Okongwu and, it's against another good rebounding team, it's just another body to high point the ball and kind of keep it up in the air. Like it's not just going to be an easy thing for the other team to get the rebound. Onyeka is always going to need a little bit of help as a rebounder. And he's one of those guys that is a perfect, like help rebounder where, he's going to get some, he's going to keep some balls alive. Like it's not going to be a rollover picnic if he's out there because he's a real athlete.
And also Rea Shay, while not a like individual great rebounder, very good at the tip rebounds, very good at the ball is high pointed. I'm going to jump over my center's defender to tip the ball to my center. The the player, my center is trying to box out, I can tip the ball. So while he's boxing them out, I tip it to his area so he can grab the rebound. Very good at that. Daniels will do that. Kobe Buffkin does it. Krejci does it. Like the little things. The Hawks have not done the little thing. They have not done the little thing. It's what's killed them. They have all the offensive talent in the world, elite offensive talent up and down the roster when you look at it holistically. But because they don't do the little things, it just kills them. It kills them on the margins. They're constantly losing the rebound battles when Capella's not in the game. They're constantly losing the effort play. They're constantly not getting enough steals, not getting enough blocks, not getting enough deflections to disrupt offensive possessions. So it's not just we walk the ball up the floor and then we run our sets. Nobody touches us. We get an open corner three because one guy makes one dribble and collapses defense because the guy in front of him can't guard. Like those days to me look to be almost over. Like Quinn is not about that. Like he wants physical on-ball defense to take the pressure off his bigs so that when they are helping, it's not a disaster on the back line. Like now when there's a breakdown, Okongwu can help and like be secure in knowing that Dyson Daniels coming down from the whatever side to get his man, or Rea Shay to get his man, or Jalen to get his man. That's just not something the Hawks have had. It's been too often. Capella, Okongwu, John Collins, Jalen Johnson. Like those four guys are the only ones competing night in and night out. DeAndre Hunter as well. Those five guys really just before they traded John. But I'm just saying like it's only been those guys who consistently do the little stuff. Whereas Sadiq struggled, even though he played hard, just struggled on the margins. Like just always a step behind what the offense was doing. That really, combined with his lack of physical pop, really hurt the Hawks defensively this past season especially when he was playing the four. You got Bogey overstretched sometimes when he's playing any position other than two guard. And he had to do it because you invested so much in Dejounte. You got to get your best players out there. So you got to throw lines of Trey, Dejounte, Bogey, and you're just not giving yourself a chance defensively. And so, like, I'm excited. To me, if I'm a Hawks fan, I understand if you're frustrated that the Hawks didn't get Brandon Ingram back, or they didn't get like a truly top 50 player. But I'm trying to tell you guys, like, that doesn't matter. You know how you get a top 50 player? You build it in-house. That's how you do it. Like, you're not like these. I mean, even these teams that are trading for these elite superstars, they're not making the difference that you guys think they are, because those teams are losing talent as well. And it hurts them on the margins. And you look up and the Suns are no better than what they were before they traded for Kevin Durant. Because they lost all that good equity in Cam Johnson and Mikal Bridges. Like, this is a tough league now. It's not just about the elite superstars. You got to build the teams around them. And to me, for the first time since 2021, there seems to be a plan. There seems to be a plan of action of how the Hawks want to play, the type of players they want, and how they're going to act going forward. We don't need to spend too much time on it, but I think the decision to trade AJ Johnson is a sign of the Hawks moving on. Even though AJ's young and talented, the Hawks being like, no, we want players that fit what we want to do. We got to get defense first, got more defensive talent onto this roster. We cannot afford to have more negative defenders on the team, regardless of how you feel about AJ. Like, at the end of the day, like, his defense is his biggest issue. It limits the positions he can play next to Trey Young. It limits how many minutes he can play truthfully. And like, as bad as the Hawks defense were, they couldn't afford to play him, even though he's got all the talent in the world. Like, the Hawks literally could not play him, injury. So, like, I think that's the sign of the Hawks being like, hey, we want guys who fit what we want to do on both ends of the floor.
Yeah, he was never the 0.5-second decision maker that Quinn
That too.
wanted. So it's like the combination of defense, like you said, and that was just kind of a bad fit. Plus everything else that happened in his life, and it's just like, okay, he needs a fresh start and a better fit, but it just didn't really fit here.
Yeah, it is interesting to talk about the way guys play, because I have to give our friend Wes Morton a little hat tip here. He's made a joke today like Quinn Snyder's had enough of these AAU folks, and so Rea Shay,
Absolutely. Oh,
you're a chitch. Am I
You're
close, Kevin?
Yurchich? Yurcich.
Nikola.
And now Dyson Daniels, and and all of that. And I don't want to start some sort of conversation there, but we talked about last episode about guys in Europe are they're more focused on team skills, right? That the development is just more focused on team skills, and I think that a lot of the development happens over here. With the one-on-one development is crucial for your high-end offensive players to be able to kind of have a full bag to work with, if something's got to kind of come together. But it is interesting to see the Hawks, go international. I mean, why did they steer away from Luka? Was it just because Luka said, "I'm not going to play for Atlanta," or was it just because they didn't feel like they had the infrastructure to support an international player to come over and feel like they have all of the? It's a different support needs
Yeah.
for a guy coming over from a country like that, right? And so, and Quinn coached internationally, early in his career, right? And so it's just that's interesting to me to kind of think about the Hawks really swinging in a different direction, and for me, like everything that's happening, like I don't want to say I know, but when Quinn got hired, there was a good bit of reporting that Quinn got certain assurances that he was going to have voice in roster decisions. All of these moves have Quinn's fingerprints all over them. All
Yep.
of these moves reflect what Quinn was talking about all last season, right? And for Hawks fans that are like, I'm so tired of this front office or the owner's kids involved, like, first of all, we don't know any of that stuff or don't know any of that, like whatever, right? I continue to say since the 2023 deadline, they have been not panicking. They have not been going for the big shiny object. They have put together a plan and they are working that plan, even though it might feel slow to some fans, it might feel very incremental to some plans. They are working the plan, right? And how long is it going to take for them to kind of turn the corner? How many games will they win? 52 games this year? I don't know. Let's see what the roster looks like in 10 days. Because this thing's going to shake out more. I think in the coming days as we get there. But for me, and some fans like Glenn, you're giving them too much credit. And I know my personality. I'm very optimistic, and I want to believe in people, and I want to believe people can do good, and all that sort of stuff. But I also understand Hawks fans that are feel like, man, I've been burned so many times, by kind of what's been happening. So I am empathetic and I validate that. But for me, what we would call it the deadline 23, it's just the hire Quinn, whatever that starting point you want to pick is, they have been working this plan. And what they did today was a part of this plan that and it all has Quinn's fingerprints on it, and it all takes me back to everything we heard Quinn talking about last year.
I wonder if he's just like beside himself with glee. Like, I feel like Daniels is the best point of attack defender
Oh,
he's ever had.
ever. Yeah.
And he had like even the ones that are like he just has not had a lot of point of attack defense on his rosters over the course of his career, like as a head coach.
Yeah,
And
I
to
want to
get
see them play
Daniels,
the
he's
Magic next
probably just
year,
bugging
and
out.
I know I want to see them play the Magic next year, and I wish I could hear a little like Quinn saying to Joe Ingles, like, "Thank God I don't have to play the point attack anymore. I got Dyson Daniels because those guys have fun back and forth, you know." And Joe Ingles is, I mean, good for where he started. What a great career he's had. Like,
Oh
I
yeah.
respect it a lot, but it's just kind of funny to kind of think about that. But you go back to those like Royce O'Neal, like it's really
Yeah,
a
I think he's
forward,
the
not
best
not he's
one.
not a guard defender,
No.
and you kind of go back through kind of those mental things and stuff like that. But I agree with you, and it's funny because when I've been reading more lesser known people who wrote on Rea Shay, and a lot of people are saying he's more of an offensive prospect and the defense is going to be okay. And I don't, which is interesting to me, to kind of think about that. And he was like, a surprisingly good scorer for his age and league he was in. even though he doesn't really have the ability to kind of force his way to the rim yet and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting. Like I wish I could ask Quinn, if I could ask you one question, what do you really think of V? Like how big of a role can V have next year? Yeah, are you thinking 14 minutes a night, just defending on the second unit, being the guy who takes that responsibility when Dyson's off the court, or what is the kind of the vision for that there? And Quinn will probably say, like, I want four guys like that. It's gonna be Kobe and Veet and that kind of thing. But for me, I think about, is the Congo really going to start? It feels like it's going in that direction, but we
Yeah.
don't know that yet, right? And for me, it's like, is Dyson going to start, right? That could happen,
Yeah.
that could happen, right? You might need Hunter to three if just to get more shooting on the court if that's what you're going to do. If they still have Hunter, well, we'll see what kind of happens there. And then so for me, I just they should be able to defend next year. They should be able to defend next year. But Quinn's going to preach team rebounding, and Quinn's going to teach better help, more connectivity. Bogey not running around like a chicken with his head cut off when he's and stuff like that, right? So, and I mean, to me, I know that again, Hawks fans are like, man, they should have done better than this. They should have got like, oh, Hawks fans are like, Trey must be pit. Like, I understand where you're coming from. I understand where those thoughts are coming from. I understand the kind of the basis for that kind of reaction. But I have to think, like, Trey's a part of this thinking and this dialogue and this conversation. Like, I don't. Trey's not some like outside person who's not connected to what the plan is.
Yeah.
I have to think
Agreed.
he's like right in the middle of buying in, and Trey's saying Quinn's praises all year last year. All year last year. Does that now, if they come back and win 40 games, is Trey going to be like, okay, yeah, I've really had? I mean, that could happen. But I feel like as fans want the big move, Tyler spoke very eloquently, earlier in this episode, saying that's not how teams get there anymore. That's
Uh,
not the path. You got to build up a group of guys. I mean, in Boston, like, made me look silly for the way I predicted the finals would go. The way they won was every minute. They had five guys on the court who always knew exactly what they were supposed to do, and they did it together, and they worked hard, and they were connected, and they took the responsibility seriously. They knew the principles, all that. That's what it takes to win now, right? It's not as simple as like, oh man, James Harden is not happy where he is. Let's go get him, and let's put four, like, plus defense. That's not how it works anymore.
the
That's not how
the
it works anymore. So
Sixers,
this,
the before, like, just to echo your point, Glenn, before MB got hurt, the Sixers traded James Harden, who had a great season for the Clippers, by the way. He's still a great player. And they didn't miss anything. They were still contenders.
yep.
Maxey just went right into the role and became this dominant scorer. But then also they had all these wing defenders. They had Batum, they had Covington. Like they had more tertiary pieces. I felt like before MB got hurt, that was probably the best Sixers team MB played with in the entirety of his career. He's played on some great teams. So that's why I'm kind of interested how the rest of the offseason is going to go. I think these teams with cap space are why teams aren't jumping out their seats to go trade for Brandon Ingram, or even why they're not jumping out the seats to trade for Trey Young. Not to say he's not an elite player and wouldn't help a team immediately. I just think they're looking at it like, if we don't have the tertiary pieces, it doesn't matter. Like, if we get, like, the reason why it works for the Cleveland Cavaliers when they traded for Mitchell is they had their young core still there, and then they added the final piece while they were on rookie scale contracts, so they could afford to take that salary. I just think the teams. I think the teams who are trying to improve themselves are starting to see there are no more shortcuts. There are no more, we can go sign a Bogan and Capella in the offseason and immediately turn our team into a good to great regular season team like the Hawks did. Like, I think that era is just over. Like, you got to build it organically, or it's just not going to be sustainable. You're going to be susceptible to shooting slumps completely derailing your season, like the Hawks, like what happened to the Hawks the past two seasons, if you think about it.
Yeah,
Like,
Yeah, and the other part of that is like with the Warriors, right? Now the Warriors were a no doubt dynasty, but their superstar played harder than anybody else on that team all the time, right? He gave up the ball, and he sprinted, in the offensive half court, and he did split cuts, and he and Giannis plays so hard, like up and like he plays so hard all the time. And then I'm not trying to, dump on him, but then you watch what Luka did in this past postseason run, and like that's not what Luka's doing, right? Not, I'll say, again, I'm optimistic. Not yet. Like he's probably got to lose a little bit of weight, get himself into shape, all that sort of stuff, right? But Trey works hard. Like, and there's no doubt he could. I mean, his body, like he's in great shape. He works really, really, really hard, right? But can he, in terms of like what he's doing, like all the time, like is he, can he get from you know, he's A plus on offense, it like gives you everything you'd want on offense. On defense, sometimes it's a B plus, sometimes it's a C plus. Like, and that's where the whole team's been, not just Trey. I'm not trying to single him out, but one of the other marks of teams that get all the way to the top is their best player is as committed, if not more committed, to all the little stuff as anybody else on that team. And Trey's had coaching turnover. Trey's had completely different roster season to season, and so there hasn't been stability for him to kind of really settle into the plan. I think that's one of the biggest aspects of the Quinn hire is there's actually like a really thoughtful plan around everything they're doing now. And my hope is that's something that Trey coming into his second full season with Quinn, just more of that buy-in, just more of that commitment.
Uh, Legendary blogger, Hoop Opinion, Brett Legree, posting on Twitter about Dyson Daniels that he's hoping that Dyson Daniels can be the type of player that will look at Trey Young sometimes and be like, "Hey, what are we doing here? Come on." Just
Better.
because of the level of defensive talent that
Be
he
better.
is,
Yep.
let's go. Push Trey. Like Trey did a lot of good last year, but that's just the start. It's got to be better.
Yep.
Not now we've seen you could do it. You got to push for more than just I'm not the worst in it. You got to push to be at like you got to push every advantage you have with your quickness, with your strength, with your hands, IQ. You got to push it to the limit, and then go
Processing, yeah.
and then with the defensive talent that the Hawks have now, be elevated because those other guys are now supporting you. You got to support them at the same time. Um, I want to actually get back to Rea Shay because Glenn, you pointed out that the people you're reading are more excited about his offense, and
Yep.
it's funny. I watched the two games of FIBA 19 when they played the United States, and then I watched part of Spain. And the biggest thing I took away from Rea Shay, one, I thought he was incredible defensively in both games, but like France just didn't have a point guard, and like what I liked about Rea Shay, like just overall, his off ball movement is really good, and I watch him when he comes off these screens. Can the Hawks get him to be a shooter off these screens? He did it sometimes, but can he be somebody? Because he's a really fluid athlete. Can he be somebody like a Kyle Korver? Not saying he's going to be the type of shooter that Kyle is, but somebody who you got to run him off screens, or he's going to be a real problem getting open looks night after night because he just of how to me, I'm like how well he moves off ball. Like I think there's something there, and like no team in France or in Europe they're going to use him that way because that's not really how they play offense.
Yep.
At least where he was with. I think
Yep.
Atlanta, to me, I think if they're going to get number one pick value from Rea Shay, they got to push his shooting talent to the maximum, like where it's like, oh, he's one of the best bombers, like not necessarily percentage wise, but he gets them up like Bogey does with his size. That's where you get the value offensively.
Like
And
DiVincenzo this season, like added so much value by
exactly
being a volume shooter. Like he
volume shoot.
That's the
changed
thing.
what
That's the thing. I think like
that
all the
really
fans will
changed
understand is
stuff for the
like
Knicks.
38% on 11 a game is more valuable than 44% on 4 a game, right?
Absolutely.
And there's a massive different added value when you're willing to just get up more shots, right? volume really, really
It's the
matters, you know.
it's the first thing Rea Shay. I mean, it's the biggest thing Rea Shay was talking about, shooting. I feel like that's something that Landry Fields and his team told they're taking, like, hey, uh, you shot well in Europe and like you had a good season as a shooter. You got to double this in the NBA, like full stop. You have the size, you have the jump shot, you have the quick release, you have the fluidity as an athlete. Why not push it to your being one of the truly elite offensive players because of what you do off the ball? Like if he's so good off the ball right now, why not try to maximize that and then add the on-ball stuff to that? Similar to what, like, to me, I like the development curve that a guy like maybe even Duncan Robinson has gone through offense. Again, not saying Rea Shay is this type of shooter, but I'm saying if you push him in a way to where he's got to be guarded differently based on the types of shots he's willing to take, maybe then you can add the offensive creativity, the offensive firepower that you want from your number one pick that way, instead of the traditional on ball, I run 30, however many pick and rolls as a big wing player. Like, what if he's a different like, to me, he's so good already off ball. Why don't we push this a little bit more? And you combine that with his size and defense, like that could be one of that's how you get number one pick value, at least to me, in regards to Rea Shay. I didn't mean to go to him, but I'm just fascinated. I'm fascinated with the Hawks are doing, and I'm fascinated with what the Hawks are going to try to do with him in particular.
Yeah, it just feels like the pieces are starting to fit together better. Like it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean anybody's good or bad. It's just you got to get the right blend. Glenn brought up Chris Middleton as sort of the piece next to Giannis, and in a very short window, Middleton came first, but the Bucks were in a very similar position to the Hawks, where they had Giannis, kind of
And
like the
Jabari.
Hawks have Jalen Johnson, and they had the number 2 pick, and they went and picked Jabari Parker,
Yep.
and it wasn't a very good fit. Like that didn't mean that Jabari was a heck of a player before he got hurt. Giannis was a heck of a player, but together those two players didn't really add additive value the way Chris Middleton added value to Giannis and vice versa. Like Giannis and Chris Middleton together, they were adding to each other. Whereas Giannis and Parker, it was just like when they were both out there together, it's like just kind of getting in their way. Like we saw it again with Trey and Dejounte. Like that doesn't mean that Dejounte's bad and Trey's good or vice versa. It's just sometimes you put two players out there if they need the ball, if they're kind of playing the same position, if they're not bringing complementary skill sets, it just doesn't work. And so
Doesn't work.
I'm kind of happy that the Hawks didn't draft Sarr to put next to Jalen Johnson. I don't know that would have necessarily been a situation of additive value. Whereas with Rea Shay, I think they're going to get that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Kevin. It's like it's the group that drafted Giannis and Jabari. They're now running things in Orlando, right? That's the group running things in Orlando,
Yes, they are.
and
Yes, they
they're
are.
they're
Weltman,
drafting guard
John
like
Hammond.
they
Yep.
need a point guard, but they're drafting guard defenders, right? Paulo is probably maybe like a little bit like they thought Jabari was going to be, right? Like back way back when, right? But they didn't. But Jonathan Isaac is a defensive first player at the position. I mean, I hope he plays 80 games this year. I hope he's healthy and gives them a bunch, right? But even watching that group evolve and adjust the way that they're kind of pursuing things. And in Milwaukee, they wouldn't have drafted Anthony Black. They would have drafted Jalen Suggs. That that's not what they would have done, right? But they're taking kind of a different building approach there, and I think it's kind of cool to see different kind of front office leaderships kind of learn and grow and kind of adapt too, because they were famous for just take the 6'10" guy with the 7'2" wingspan, and we'll teach him how to play a
Yeah.
little bit of
John
basketball,
Henson and
right?
Larry Sanders, and
Which is maybe what a little bit of where Sarr is right now,
yeah.
right? I still think it's going to take like 2 years for Sarr, right? Where I think Rea Shay is going to have just a more stable environment, with Trey running the offense and, uh, you know, Brian Keefe, first time head coach, and what I mean, that's hard. That's a tough and I hope Sarr does awesome, right? But it does feel like when you kind of look at the rest of these moves that the Rea Shay selection does make a lot of sense.
Rea
I know my
Shay's in
friend, Chester out there on Twitter wanted Sar. I know others wanted Sar and stuff like that and everything, and I get it, and I love those conversations. But when you look at what they're building, the Rea Shay does kind of fit, what the things Quinn's been talking about.
and Rea Shay himself is in a great environment to succeed, where the creation can come later. That's where I'm at. I'm like, I don't need him to be a creator right away.
Nope.
They need him to take a lot of threes. He's going to have to. He's going to have to change his game some. He's going to have to take more threes. But I mean, if you look at to me, if you just look at the shot release and how fast he gets the ball up, plus how high he shoots it, like with his size, he has, and the rate at which it went in last season, like you pair that next to Trey Young, who's going to dime him up, that could be a disgusting combination. Combined with Jalen Johnson and him running the fast break athletically, both guys 6'10", you're getting more. Like, it's just, I really like what the Hawks have done. I thought, to me, I wanted Klingon just because I felt like he could have been transformative defensively. But if the plan was to get Dyson Daniels, I completely understand why they went in a different direction. If the plan was always to get Dyson Daniels in a trade, I completely get it. I get why they went Rea Shay.
And there's something for us to learn too. We're always trying to learn. No one traded up top 3 or 4 to get Klingon. No one did that.
Nope.
No one did that, which I think speaks to where the league is like, the 5-house stuff, the versatility thing, that's a real thing. And I think that's something for me to kind of, I think his rim protection is going to be ridiculously good.
He's going to help.
That's
going to help
interesting.
Anderson so much, by the way. Like Scoot, like it was going to be Robert Williams, but he got hurt. But like Scoot's going to love playing with Klingon.
I'm 2 hours away. I'm going to go watch him play. I'm going to go watch him play. Right. So yeah, next 3-4 days, 5 days should be fun. I think there's more stuff coming. I don't know if it's big stuff or little stuff, or I think it'll be interesting stuff. But thankfully the weekend's here, because I can't do this for a whole other work day. Today was super distracting.
Ooh, boy, this was Glenn, this was a bad day for stuff like this to happen, because I had a lot to do. I had a lot to do at work today.
I would give myself 3 minutes to look, and I got to work for 45 minutes, an hour before I can get back to this thing. So, yeah, but hopefully, like, hey, Landry and group, if you could do this on Saturday and Sunday, we'd appreciate it.
And we still have to talk about Eurosich, but that's next week.
Let's do some homework and let's talk
plus
about
whatever happens in the next few days.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you.
Good night, Bob.
Good night, Bob.
Good night, Bob.